we're in the home stretch. Only 10 days to go until draft day. What everyone's been waiting for, and then of course shortly after we'll begin our process, and everyone will get to re enjoy their favorite part of the year, whining about people taking too long on the clock. But until we get there, we have a little bit more to cover of teams before really focusing on future players joining those teams. And that's needs, because we talked about what we think the top players are. We talked about where they should go in the draft, and we've talked about where those teams fit in the overall power ranks. Now we need to talk about what they need to do to improve themselves and really get themselves to where they need to go. So, sort of a skeleton crew today. It's just Giants and I. Thanks, Brennan, for joining me.
Couldn't let you just talk straight for an hour, so had to be here.
God, that would be boring. Um, I would do it, but it would be really boring for everybody involved. So it's really nice to have another person here with me so I don't run off in random directions. But what we're going to do is we're going to go team by team and see how many teams we get through in about an hour. And if we need to roll this over to next week, we will. But basically, the goal here is talk about each of the teams and really what their needs are going into next year based off of the path they're on. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more creative for the rebuilding teams. Hey, you sell off everything and tank. Or for the teams that are competing, they just need to add a few more startable players. Like we're going to try and get a little bit more specific than that, get a little bit more creative than that. In a couple situations, come up with some potential trades that might fit what they're trying to do. So we'll get going and see what we get to. Ready to roll, Brandon?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right, so we're going to start with the Steelers because putting this together, kind of to start with the top and work down. To me, again, if the team wasn't in the AFC North, we'd be talking about them as a perennial playoff team. But unfortunately, he is where he is. The main thing it seems like he needs, because he is still competitive this year, is additional depth on offense, and then or linebacker, but really another D end. And I'm not going to try and say D end for everybody because everyone I'm sure could use another D end until next year. But really, he's got starters at every position. He's got decent flex options at every position. Now, just a matter of additional potential depth if there's injuries or as potential, bye week fill-ins or things like that. I'd say on offense, and then a focus on the front seven on defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest gap, just looking at the roster, is like a DE2. I think Armstrong is a fine. Or okay, maybe he's a DE1. Armstrong is probably a fine DE2. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that's the biggest need. I also think I really liked his Brian Robinson acquisition because I do think running back was a weak area, but I feel like he needs an RB1. He's got a bunch of RBs by committee, which can work, and when you have enough of them, he could probably piece together some running back points. But I think that's another position that could be a priority for him.
No, I agree with you completely on that. I think the combination of what Flora Brian Robinson should bring with James Cook and what he could become if he successfully dodges any additional, I'll call it help in the backfield in the draft, plus some depth pieces in Haskins and Scott. That's a pretty solid backfield.
Yeah,
Um, the thing, yeah, there's no definitive guy, but it's enough variety. I think it probably works. Um, Again, and yeah, it's. I agree with you. I think Armstrong's a great piece there at the end. My big thing with mentioning linebacker is who knows what Floyd is this year. He's got two great options in Warner and Brooks,
yeah.
but I'd like to have a third guy there because often one of your defensive flexes is going to be a linebacker, plus depth of the position because you never know what's going to happen. But really, starting out with two Pro Bowl level players is not a bad position of strength to be building out from.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Walker's back in Cleveland, and we'll see in the draft if they burst that up their linebacker room up. But yeah, I agree. A third linebacker is good. I would also call out Mac Jones is a cheap starting quarterback, still on his rookie deal, but Obviously, he's not going to give you much in a floor from a running game standpoint. New England may have soured on him, may have not. Who knows what draft shenanigans, smoke screens are happening right now? But there's an opportunity there. If you want to be competitive in that division, like you want to have a good quarterback, and I'm not sure that Mac is a standout on the fantasy front.
No, definitely wouldn't be the first time that New England pulled a fast one on us. So definitely reason for skepticism on some of what we're hearing, and reason not to be surprised if it is correct. But hey, I mean, he's got the 111 to move the stuff or to pick one of these pieces. If a player that he thinks is appropriate for filling some of these gap falls, especially at the DN position.
Yep.
Granted, those usually don't have that year one impact, but um, again, it may be something that he's continued to build his team. He's not looking for that first year impact.
Yeah. I think if I were him, like yeah, 11, like you could definitely probably take one of the top, at least top 3 DNs, maybe even just the top D end, based on landing spot that we think is going to be kind of most impactful. Running back could still be there. The UCLA kid might be around that pick. Um, Cortland Sutton like jumps out of me as like doesn't fit with the roster. I know we're not really doing like a what could they change, but like maybe flipping Cortland Sutton into another wide receiver and a D end piece or something would be worthwhile if you can find a believer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another piece that definitely could be moved around. All right. Anything else before we move on to the Packers?
Yeah, no, good overall depth team. Bummer of a division.
Yep. All right. Moving on to one of our favorites, I'd say. You want to again? We'll figure this out as we go. Any? Do you want to start with what you're seeing as the big pieces of need are, or do you want me to kind of keep going as I'm going
For the Browns,
for the Packers?
all right, what order are you going in? You
I'm kind
going
of going
in?
at the same level, then going down to the next level.
I see. I see. Okay, I was looking at the standings and going down that way. Sorry. Yeah, Packers. All right. Defensive end is none of those names are inspire a ton of confidence. Um, but you can maybe piece together some points there. I would love like a DE1. Just kind of hold that room down and let the rest of them just fill out that DE2 spot. Um, his linebackers, I don't love either. Really, like obviously, like his offense is pretty set. Um, he could use some depth at receiver, um, but I think he's also kind of making up for that with his weapons elsewhere. Um, I would say yeah, D and a linebacker jump out the most. Um, yeah, wide receiver. I mean, yeah, he's got his top 3, which are pretty good: Lazard, Boyd, and Cup. But after that, you know, an injury to one of them, and things are looking a little bit dire.
Yeah, again, not surprising. Don't have major differentiation from you. I think I had wide receiver definitely is number 2 on my list after the end. Lazard's changing teams, so not 100% sure what that's going to look like. Boyd is a depth piece. I wouldn't mind adding another wide receiver 2 or 3 into this so that you have kind of the rotation of, Cup and 3 others so that you're good for a starting perspective and a flex. And again, with 130, I think he's got the ammo to go get that. Granted, I'm sure you'd love to have Devontae Adams. Sorry, Jeremy. It had to be said. Last time I say it, I'll promise. Um, but going to get someone on the cheap is probably not a bad idea.
And let's not forget he might have 3 starting quarterbacks this year, so he could flip one of those for a piece.
That That'd be a nice change of events for Jeremy after the situation he was in last year.
Yeah, 6 months too late.
Man, well, that's future Jeremy's problem, and this is division mate. I would be okay if he didn't have that level of firepower going into the season, but I don't always get what I want. All right, let's move down to the Browns. Um, I went a little unconventional with what I said for what he needs. I would say what he needs is a heavy dose of good luck because from a running back position, Dobbins, I don't think has put together a full healthy season yet, so that's an issue. Who knows where Gordon's playing? Who knows how many games Kamara's going to be playing? Who knows what P. Ryan's role is going to be when Williams comes back? And who knows what the hell if Zamir White's even going to make the roster this year? And that's just the running back position. So he's got a lot of names that were really attractive last year, but had a rough season last year because they either couldn't stay on the field or couldn't stay healthy. So he really needs some good luck to let these guys stay healthy and really contribute. So that's my piece. A healthy dose of good luck.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the strongest rosters in the league, so it's hard to find a position that's glaringly weak. So I definitely agree. Getting some bodies on the running back position will be helpful throughout the season. The wide receivers, obviously, his top two are amazing, Lamb and McLaren. But after that, I mean, I think a lot of these guys have had their day already. Obviously, Kenny Galladay, not signed yet, was a disaster for the last 3 years in New York. Allen Robinson was a disaster last year for the Rams. Adding some depth to the wide receiver position behind your two star and cheap guys would be another position to look at.
Yep. And RJ, appreciate you joining us. We're looking at the Browns here and talking about what needs they might have as a roster. Anything jump out to you as you're just kind of coming in fresh here?
Uh, I mean, not particularly. I heard the majority of things said about Browns, and I agree. They're a pretty stacked team, so there's not a whole lot that you can like pick. That's like, oh, this is a glaring need. I will compliment him on his tight end. I think Dallas Goddard's one of the better ones. Better non-Travis Kelsey tight ends, because Kelsey is a different tier. I would figuring out a little bit more depth at running back and trying to find the backup for Russell Wilson would be the highest priorities for me.
Yeah, I'd be knocking on Pat's door for Stidham.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Keeping going here. Brandon, do you want to talk Ravens?
Sure. Yeah. Just running through the roster here. On offense, running. I mean, he kind of just needs depth across the board. He does have 35 players, but I feel like the amount of offensive players he has is lacking, especially since he has three quarterbacks. So some depth at running back behind Pacheco. Obviously, the hope is that he's going to have a larger role next year. But as everyone has seen with the Chiefs running back room, it's been a revolving door since since Hunt left or was cut. So we'll see. He's going to have a role, but will he be able to carry you on offense? It's probably going to be very touchdown dependent. Defensive end, there are some guys there that are productive, but that kind of just that room seems like it could use some love. I like his linebacking core, his safeties. So those would be kind of the 2 or 3 areas, I guess. Depth and some more bodies on running back, wide receiver, pretty good, but then defensive end.
Yeah. All right, RJ, anything jump out to you?
Just defensive end. Add add another player or two there, and then running back. Wide receivers fine. You have like 1 through 4. Obviously, you would like to get some more depth there, but that's then you're getting pretty low on the priority list as far as like things that need to be addressed now. The third running back and who you would typically consider as your defensive end too, like consistently, needs to be figured out.
Yeah. I mean, as his 4 wide receivers go, like if you were to take the best 4 on any team, he's probably giving you a run for your money there.
Yep. I can agree with that. He may not have the best like top wide receiver, but his fourth wide receiver is better than most people's fourths.
Yeah.
Yep. The only other piece I'd add is tight end.
Yeah.
He's got Hill. He's got Ertz. I don't love either option going into this year. I think, um, they're probably in a rotation or tight end twos in their given locations. Um, but hey, if you could take, say, Hill and pair him with your pick and go get a younger, more established tight end, that might be the thing to do. But yeah, otherwise, if he sticks and picks with his first, he should be able to get one of these DNs to help uh, depth his depth in that room. So not a whole lot of glaring needs. So just kind of a which one makes the most sense for you.
Yeah. I mean, he could also take one of the top tight ends in the class, but I'm on record as not recommending that because you won't see that value right away. But Durham Smythe, isn't he the guy that just got extended in Miami? Like, aren't they kind of leaning on him from the
I'm not
without
sure because
Becky
I
there?
feel like Miami's trying to use their tight end more as a blocker, rather
Mm.
as kind of an H back or blocker rather than a traditional receiver. But
Yep.
um,
Yeah. All those statements are correct, and that's why they like Smythe.
Gotcha.
He's pretty good at that H back role.
all right.
He won't be
Okay.
productive at all.
So again, the goal here is not to be outright, okay, blow it up, build, go acquire picks or stuff like that. But next up is the Texans. What do you think the Texans need most right now?
Blow it up. Forget picks.
All right, I will attempt a first go at this. You guys take a look. My needs for the Texans is patience, along with any additional 10 polls that they want to try and acquire this year. He's got Deshaun. He went and made a move for DK Metcalf. He's got other depth at the receiver position and has slowly but surely been adding pieces around the roster that uh, could set him up as good depth. But he doesn't quite have really a lot of those 10 polls he needs. And it's maybe a year from having everything established how it needs to. So I would say continue to be patient and opportunistic of adding those 10 polls, but don't try and rush the process. Otherwise, you're going to be in a position like Bill found himself last year, or um, you know, Pats often finds himself trying to figure out what to do with 2/3 of a complete roster and pieces that aren't there to finish things up. So that's my projected need here. Open to you, what you guys have to think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Probably not the team that wants to be just out on the market buying players. More in the situation of use the draft picks, or if you can get really good value, which I don't expect, you can move them. But yeah, kind of just hope you hit on your picks and be patient. Like it's not he doesn't have players that have a small window. Watson's still 27, 28. So like
27. He'll be 28 this season.
yeah. And Metcalf's relatively young, so like he doesn't have to do it this year. Just continue to build assets and give a good effort this year, but next year might be one of those where we're talking about him competing.
Yeah, it's funny because if we, he made a couple of different moves, right? He traded up into the top 10 with some of his extra picks, and then he traded 109 for DK and a bunch of seconds and thirds. So he doesn't have as large of a war chest. He's got 105, obviously 108, obviously high value picks, and then 3 thirds and some later picks. Like after making the move for Metcalf and that trade up to 108, like you probably stick at 105 because you're probably going to really like someone at 105. But I would consider some trade down and like try and get like multiple firsts to add like a defensive end, a linebacker, running back, another wide receiver. Like if you're able to move down, I think he would be in a pretty good spot. His division is pretty weak. Like he could theoretically, like if he can, make a couple savvy moves to build out some, or raise the floor of his kind of current depth, he could win that division.
Yep. All right. Anyone want to take a shot at Colts?
Depth. Currently rocking 28 players with 2.5 million cap space, and I think very little in draft assets. His biggest need is to fill out the rest of this roster. He wants to be competitive. You got to have 40 guys on your roster if you want to be a competitive team. Like you're 12 guys short. I mean, you might really like the guys you have. You're 28 guys, but it's imperative to add some injury insurance and pop off insulation to your scores.
Yeah, I think a majority of that depth needs to go into improving wide receiver if we're going to focus on one particular position. The rest are pretty good with the, noteworthy players. Safety, maybe, but, safety you can find along the way. Just wide receiver, and then build out depth from there.
Yeah, his team's going to be. I mean, if like Bijan's been talked about to the Eagles too much, which has terrified me. But I mean, if they add a round 1 through 3 player to that backfield, he's gonna have a weakness at running back as well.
Yep. So my need is in line with your guys's. What he needs is access to his 2025 picks, because with no draft capital and not really an ability to break down anything he's got right now, he needs access to those picks to get what he needs to fill out the depth and create the cap space to fill out the depth of this roster. So I'd say that's his biggest need right now, is to make it through the draft, get those picks, and start finishing out what he wants this roster to look like.
I got a trade that could make sense for Penny for Cortland Sutton. 2 teams we talked about. Swapping some needs around.
That's interesting. Because again, he's got Penny and Gainwell. So, and again, if Bijan goes to that location, who knows? But there seem to be just as many question marks around Sutton and his health.
Yeah.
So, no, that's intriguing for sure. All right, let's move on down to the Jags. Scary as this is, probably the projected favorite in the AFC South this year. For me, I think it's addressing running back and then defensive depth. I appreciate what he has in that running back room, but he's got all backups, like legit backups or running back threes, not necessarily guys who expect to see in much of a timeshare. So getting somebody who is going to be in that running back 1 or 2 range. And then I've mentioned Ted Bowles before. He's got a good variety at the end and D tackle, 3 really good linebacker options, but he needs to continue to either get another more reliable option on his front 4, or another sort of flexible player at linebacker to really make this defense where it needs to be. I'd say it's probably league average right now, but that would help them push towards that top 10, top 12 defense.
I think he's pretty all right. Like probably a defensive tackle, like a more established defensive tackle, not one that's going to put up like the higher end of rotational numbers, but like an actual established starter giving you like 150 points, which like I know there becomes a massive point disparity with those where like, there goes from like one putting up 110 to like 89 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's one of those weird positions, but adding that and completely defensive tackle, linebacker, but running back's probably the highest priority.
Yeah, running back for sure is my highest priority. Nasir Adderley retired, $5 million at safety position. He should probably figure out. But yeah, definitely getting an established running back. It's he traded 114 and someone else for Chase Young, and I feel like if he still had that pick, he could potentially add someone that could really help that room.
So I don't hate the idea with this team of like trying to grab a good defensive tackle and maybe two mediocre linebackers heading into the season, and just you have enough bodies at running back. If all of them stay on the teams through training camp, you have enough like bodies to where you could just wait and see who becomes like a bell cow because of injury or something like that and pick somebody up cheaper, maybe for like a 2025 second rather than going out and spending like a first round pick on somebody who would have a job for multiple years. Just grab the guy that has the hot hand for a season.
Yeah.
Just because he has more holes, like take care of the defensive stuff with players that are going to be productive for years to come.
Yeah.
And then try to see if you could just kind of stream running back. Wouldn't be an unreasonable idea.
I think adding a tight end too, to supplement Hunter Henry, who I know we all are probably still enamored with slightly from the skill set, but opportunity wise, just hasn't been there.
Where does he play?
Hunter Henry on your team, on dude.
Oh yeah, he's dead to me. We have Mike Gesicki.
neeeeeed dead.
Yeah,
Yep.
Gesicki, and then also like Juju taking more like slot role stuff too. Like, yeah.
No, I still like him as a red zone target. So yeah, I can agree with that. Picking up like another tight end that can do some of the heavy lifting when Hunter Henry isn't seeing a bunch of touchdowns. That wouldn't be an unreasonable idea.
All right, let's move right along. Good old Tennessee Titans. Brandon, I believe you are up.
Oh, jeez. We're not telling him to just blow it up, right?
Well, I mean, it can be along those veins, but we're trying to be more creative than just that.
It's already been blown up.
Yeah. I think his need is just stay the course. He's done a pretty good job. He's got two, mid-round first this draft and 4 next year. I think he can continue to sell down pieces. There's valuable pieces on this roster as I'm looking through it. Like, he could continue to sell down and get some more value in the future drafts to kind of rebuild this thing and maybe start adding some pieces now if he's not planning. His roster is clearly not in a state where he's like trying to make it play for 101. So I would say, I don't know why he has like 12 safeties, but start I would start just shopping pieces, probably during the draft, post draft. You might find some eager shoppers who want to get established pieces at positions that they can't now from the draft based on like draft value. So I would say stay the course.
Yeah. My suggestion here, and then RJ can jump in, is stay the course, but the specific need is for his assets to make it through the draft unscathed. Like if you look at the pieces that he would want to continuously move off of here, make sure that those teams don't add another option. Like Isaiah McKenzie went to Indianapolis this year. They have Pierce, they have Pittman, and they added McKenzie. If they add a top 2 round receiver as well, that's going to make it tougher to move off of McKenzie. And that's just one example. Like Quez Watkins, BC Johnson, Skoranek. Like basically, these are players he can get good draft capital for, but they need to make it through the draft without getting major competition or being a major landing spot for some of these more attractive rookies. So that's what I would say he needs is make it through the draft unscathed and keep selling.
Yep. His linebacker room in particular is pretty strong. And this year and certainly next year with the switch to true position, these are middle linebackers who will be of interest from teams. So buy a year early, folks.
Works out
Yep.
pretty well.
I like it all. Have no other additions for that.
Cool. All right, moving down to the Bills. RJ, you want to take a first shot here?
Wide receiver is the biggest need on this team. If he intends on competing, I would actually say biggest need is to get rid of those running backs and turn them into draft capital, though.
Yeah.
I think linebacker is also shallow.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's exactly what I was saying. Is wide receiver 2 and a breakdown trade or 2. I think Bateman, Patrick, and Landry give you 3 rotational pieces. I don't think you need to go hunting for a wide receiver 1 necessarily, but
Landry's currently unsigned.
what's that?
Landry is currently a free agent.
Oh, I did not realize that. So, again, I think he's going to land someplace, and he's going to have wide receiver 4 value. I think in our league, he's going to, I don't think he's out of value. I don't think he's necessarily worth what he's getting paid right now. But I wouldn't drop him from Bills. I think he's. Let's see where he goes and figure it out from there. But I'd say wide receiver 2, break down either Pollard or McCaffrey into a couple pieces here, and I mean, he still has $20 million in cap space too, so he has some flexibility to do a couple of different things here.
And only 31 players roster at the moment.
Yep.
Only 3 draft picks in this draft: 2nd, 3rd, 4th round.
Yep, so a good amount of flexibility.
Breakdown trade makes a lot of sense. Or just keep doing some 2-for-1s. He's done a couple of those lately. A couple more.
Yep. All right. Moving over to the Dolphins. He needs some real life NFL trades. Not necessarily our NFL trades, but some of these trades that happen in real life. What do I mean? Saquon. Not sure if he's going to get traded or not, but he's still holding out and he wants a contract. So maybe it's not trades. Maybe it's, roster moves to happen. They need to either get him locked up or get him traded to get locked up so that he doesn't lose productivity at running back 1 and can have Singletary as that secondary piece. Nuke obviously had some, difficulties last year getting on the field. But there's a lot of rumor about him moving. And, of course, rumor out of Baltimore that Lamar's ultimatum to the Ravens was get me OBJ and Nuke and we'll talk. So, again, moving him so that he doesn't necessarily have to rely on, what is it? Not Huntley, but like Skelton or whoever the hell they have in Arizona this year. So between those and then a couple of defenders like Devin White as well, let's get these roster moves done, make it happen, get these guys on some better places where they're going to produce all year for Miami instead of being in a position where they may be holding out, or they may get a partial training camp, or they may not come into the season as healthy as they should be.
It's Colt McCoy in Arizona. the great Colt McCoy. I would like to see more depth at defensive end.
Yeah, outside of Brian Burns, yeah.
I really like this roster as a whole. I would obviously I do agree with you want to see Saquon ultimately have something happen to where he's being productive this year, and you would like DeAndre to get traded or at least something happen with him. But other than that, I mean, tight end's it's a wasteland. It's a bunch of guys that kind of have jobs.
Yeah, but like their jobs are also like, you might get a couple touchdowns on the year, and like that's going to be your total points for the week. Like, it's a very uninspiring group.
Yeah. As of right now, find some defensive ends and then go from there.
Yeah, I think it's another team that will benefit from getting their 25 picks, so they can make some more moves.
This is true.
Although they have a couple seconds this year, and everything besides their first next year, so they have some picks to maneuver around, and the cap space. The glories of a $1 million 400-point quarterback.
Pretty decent team.
Yep.
All right, let's keep moving along the East here. The Jets. Brandon, I think you are up.
I think he's another like keep staying the course team. I think he's done a really nice job of building this team. Honestly, through his wide receiver room to date, and he did a couple trade downs to get some more draft picks. He was very active in free agency, filling out this defense. I mean, he built a defense. I would call it like a top defense, but he built a productive defense in free agency. I mean, they're pretty much all on 1-year deals, but he has a ton of draft capital to bring in some long-term answers. And I think obviously he'd like a quarterback. I mean, if someone falls to him at 110, I think is his first pick. I think he smashes that button to kind of have something long-term besides Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think he's kind of doing it right, investing in running back last to kind of get this rebuild, I would say, turbocharged. I think he's done a great job.
Yep, I would say, kind of your point, additional help in that front seven. I think he grabbed a couple guys who are good depth. I don't think he's necessarily got sort of the premier piece or two there, but I think where he does have picks in this draft, he should be able to really fill that out with some premium players. And he's not in a rush. The challenge, though, is Jimmy is probably a 1-year option at quarterback. So while he's doing that, if he is going to take his time, he probably needs to lock down a long-term option at quarterback.
Yep, I agree. Turn some of this random stuff into lower end draft capital and see if you can package that to find some productive stuff. I like the way he's building his team, though.
Yeah, he's still got 4 first-round picks, 3 seconds, 3 thirds. All of them before pick 313. It's very likely that he's walking out of that draft with a running back, maybe a quarterback, defensive ends, linebacker, some long-term pieces that will make that defense look a little bit more enticing.
Yep. All right. RJ, what do you think about the Patriots?
It's a really good team.
Top of the line.
Well coached.
This is a can you stay patient for a full year?
Yeah, I thought some of his free agency moves were interesting because they definitely contradict his plan of tanking for 101 or 102.
Well, I mean, he has 4 first-round picks this year. In theory, he can't. I don't know if he's necessarily tanking for the top pick. Like it's going to be a higher end pick, but he's taking on too many quality players. Like unless he does some moves.
Well, shoot, give me my 25 picks. I'll take some of those away. Yeah, that's a fair point for sure. He's got some high quality 2023 draft assets that will add some points to this roster.
Yep. Which is why I believe what he needs is one of two things. Either RJ in particular or some of the league to get some rookie fever here because he wants to move off those picks. I think it's 4 firsts and 4 seconds. This year, he wants to move into 2024 draft capital and keep his point total. So he needs some people to pick up some rookie fever so he can move those pieces. There's a danger if he tries to convert them into players, then move those. But realistically, if he wants to keep the points off of his roster, that might be the way he needs to go about doing it so that he can get the pieces that the people who still have their 24 picks or would want the 24 picks would want in exchange to move sort of capital from this year into next year.
I agree. I'm not opposed to getting some of those picks. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Got a month until draft, right?
Yep.
No,
Sure.
listen.
All right. So I think we're just going to do the AFC tonight. So we'll finish up with the AFC West, and then we'll finish up next week with the NFC needs. As long as nobody makes any major deals. So we'll go ahead and talk about what the Broncos need. Is it me who's up or?
Yep.
All right. So in my opinion, the Broncos could use another running back and depth basically everywhere else. Classic Broncos team has a lot of really good players and a lot of really good positions. His receiving core is looking phenomenal at the moment. Needs to add a running back, and again, especially defensive depth. But once he does that, he's got a chance to compete in the division. But still needs to do that in order to keep pace with some of the other teams there.
Was it Ravens that we talked about having the depth at wide receiver?
Yeah.
And it's just funny to see Broncos insane wide receivers, but Devin Tompkins doesn't compare to Hunter Renfro.
Minor difference.
Yeah, I think if you were to add the 4 together, his probably win here.
Yeah, of course, but just amusing that was something that we had talked about. I think the team's good. I would definitely agree with adding a running back. Foreman is somebody that I'm pretty high on this year, but I would not feel comfortable going into the season with Gus, Donta, and Kareem Hunt.
Foreman signed a 1-year, $2 million deal. I would not be very confident that he's going to be a bell cow.
I don't think he's going to be a bell cow, but
there's no bell cow. But in my opinion, he's going to hold the majority split because he can do the stuff that Herbert cannot do.
Joanne, just because we're talking about your team,
it was just kismet. I will say this: linebacker is a massive need, and depth generally, as Mike said, is also definitely there for me.
Yeah.
All right.
So another team that needs their 25 picks, basically.
Basically, yes. All right, so Bill, since you've joined us here, again, we're going team by team and talking about needs. So we'll let you go next here with the Chargers.
Well, let me get that pulled up real quick. All right, Chargers. Apologies for the lack of preparedness.
That's what happens when you show up late to class.
I know.
Get called out immediately by the teacher.
Yeah. I think, it's pretty obvious he needs a quarterback of the future. Sam Howell can definitely be that, and I'm a believer, but is it going to be a long-term thing, especially after the sale goes through? What's going to happen there? We don't know. Gino's not going to be a long-term solution, but if you're cool riding them for the season, I understand. Then I would just say he probably just needs a running back and a backup tight end.
I think wide receiver 2. I think he's got some good depth and obviously Ayuk, but I think he wants another kind of higher tier wide receiver as well. And a DE1.
Yeah, defensive end stands out as the biggest glaring need to me, and then everything else is kind of just adding depth, and definitely adding a second wide receiver, adding another running back potentially. I don't see Mostert putting up another 200 points. I could be wrong, but
we're literally missing the obvious. He needs a kicker.
Oh no!
Is this gonna be like Chargers of last year? Just
he needs
not pick up a kicker. Yeah,
that's a good call out, Bill. Yeah, his biggest need is to have a legal roster.
Yep.
This is where I go full Cypher from Matrix. Not like this. Not like this.
I do think that a sneaky one that he might need some help with is going to be safety. Damar Hamlin may not play again, and if he does play again, I don't know that he's the starter there. But that would be my other alternative option of depth of actual player need there.
Yeah, because Abram is also a rotational safety at this point.
It says he's questionable with an undisclosed injury, so I'm sure he'll be all right.
He'll tough it out. Yeah.
What are you guys talking about? He told Joe Biden he was going to play again. No one ever lies in the White House.
This is true.
I think if I'm looking at this roster, he's got a couple older pieces that if I were him, I would love to just break down. Chubb, some of his linebackers, Hicks and Kirksey specifically. Just breaking those guys down for some depth across his other needs here would be wise. He's got 117. He can replace D or add to his DE or wide receiver room with that pick, which is great. I would be curious what kind of trade him and Chris of the Bengals could consider for Gino, so that he could take Bijan and have Gino and Tannehill as his quarterbacks.
3 first-round
receiver.
Other thing. Gino's so good on that contract. He's worth everything.
Oh God, yeah, Gino Chubb in 116 for 101.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Oh, thank God he can't fit it in his cap.
Then figure out a way to get some expensive piece like Keenan Allen.
I'll help facilitate it.
Everyone say it with me now. The cap is fake.
Yeah, in real life, not in NFL GMs.
Chris and Jeremy need to recognize that as well.
I can't sign my free agents with some shadow signing bonus money.
That's not important.
I'd like to restructure Josh Allen, please.
All right. Moving along here, we've got the Chiefs. Brandon, what do you think about the Chiefs here in terms of their needs?
Yeah, I'm going through. This is another one of the strongest rosters overall, and that's like a goose special. It's just having like just endless depth everywhere. Um, it's kind of ridiculous. If I'm talking about what he needs to keep doing, what he needs to do, like honestly, just keep going with his formula. I think like yeah, I don't love some of the pieces, but like at their price and where they're falling into his kind of like positional um like potential points on a starting roster, like he's got a really strong roster. Like, he just kind of needs to keep doing what he's doing, which is generally selling someone a little early, breaking them down into multiple pieces that he can then use to either trade up for value or fill out his roster, impeccably.
He needs to decide who's at most risk on his roster of being replaced in a week because,
That's all of us.
well, yeah, but Goose is especially good at selling off pieces that he finds to be completely lacking in value.
Well, it's going to be very interesting because like Brian Robinson was the recent example that he was shopping, and I know I've seen like Dane Brugler's put Bijan to them at 16 a number of times. That'll be very interesting if they add another running back to that room, because then it's very crowded. And it is an example of what you just said, him selling early because they're about to be replaced or their value hurt.
I have no critiques for Goose. I look at this team and 80+% of it, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't want that on my roster. But I do acknowledge they're productive players in the league.
Actually, we have another illegal roster, so he's missing a
Just
punter.
unbelievable.
AFC,
Craziness.
AFC West is freaking craziness around here.
Unhinged.
My sort of off the wall one here, and again, I swear I'm not cheating with this, is what does Goose need? Draft capital. Because if there's one thing that Goose seems to be an expert every single year, is finding draft capital, trading down or trading around the draft with that draft capital, and somehow turning $1 into $3 through the process of making the right moves at the right time. So now's about that time for him to load up on those first that he wants to move around with, so that he can do what he wants to do during the draft and multiply some value.
Yeah, that said, he has 3 seconds in the early half of the second round, and that's like prime. You find great roster value position.
Yep.
All right, RJ. Last but not least, before we pause on the needs until next time, let's talk about the Raiders.
So depth is going to be the biggest thing, but this team's pretty good. I don't know if it's going to compete in the AFC West. But I would say the biggest thing is probably, oh man, there's like a good player at every position.
Yeah, I think running back depth. I mean, he's a fullback behind Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah,
He's got a running back playing quarterback.
tight end. Tight end seems to be the only one where he doesn't have at least one player to like stake his claim as having like one of the higher end players.
Yep. So again, I think he's got to look to pivot here. Everyone said and I think everyone agrees, he's not gonna compete in the West, and because of the strength of the North, he's not making the playoffs this year. He's paying $40 million to Lamar. Again, maybe he keeps him, maybe he renegotiates him after the year. If something happens in terms of that contract, could do that. Taylor is about to be very expensive. Mike Williams is on a good value. Again, but question is, what's that value going to be long term? I'd see if I could move some of those three pieces, maybe one or two others, pivot to some of this draft capital, and then you know push himself towards next year when he could sort of be reborn, one could say, into this division as everyone else kind of gets another year older.
Problem is he doesn't have his first next year.
Well, I mean that's an easy fix if he sells the pieces. Like, he is in a interesting position. He has all these high end names, like he has the stars, right? If he just took those names and left all his crazy depth, he would still probably run a top 10 pick next year. And he could, I don't know who has his pick next year, but he could probably sell JT or Lamar or Mike Williams for the pick itself. And then just tank. And Raiders, if you listen to this, please do so. We don't need four teams running in the West.
I question the agenda.
But it's okay. Agenda aside, it's still a valid idea, right? Like I don't want him to have a top 10 pick next year in that class. I would rather him just try to run it through and miss the playoffs with a 10-7 record or whatever the hell it's going to be. But that it's just an idea.
Yep. All right, so let's say AFC. We'll hit on the NFC next week. But for now, we'll wrap things up with trades. We're going to skip over the moves that were made to move around some of the comp picks and just focus on the moves that were really made since last week. I'm trying to remember, what was the last deal of last week? Was that the Pickett deal, or was that?
No, the Pickett deal hadn't went down, I don't think. Wait, yes, it did.
It did. We talked about Pickett.
It's the Van Ginkel.
No, I think we talked about that too.
Brian Robinson is the next deal.
And we talked about Zach Wilson. I think it's around Darian Butler.
Did we talk about Diggs and Debo?
No,
I don't think we did.
We did not.
No, that was Thursday. We potted before that.
Oh, yeah, I gave up Darian Butler in the post pod.
That's right.
Yeah, we talked about the Zach Wilson deal. That was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yep, that's right. So yeah, Eagles getting a free Darian Butler to take him off Panthers roster. Good for you.
No, other way around.
Oh, you gave up Darian Butler to get him off the roster to Panthers.
Yeah, freed up a taxi squad spot.
Oh, that works. Then moving over to one of the bigger deals of the week, Broncos moving Debo and Kansas City second for Diggs. Moves the younger piece, the slightly cheaper piece, and a second for Diggs. But God, the ceiling on Diggs is fantastic.
For this year, yeah, but Diggs is going to be 30. Sounds like Bills are going to be adding a wide receiver weapon, whether it's Hopkins or someone in the draft. And Diggs has scrubbed his Insta. I'm a little concerned about what's going on with Diggs. He was really pissed off at the end of the season.
It would be too if I was one and done for 3 years in a row.
Well, okay, but he was. So I don't know. I think there's some concerns there. I mean, yes, I think for this year, like Diggs has the higher ceiling, but I know Falcons is trying to be younger and extend his window. So he gets a pick and he gets a receiver he likes, who's going to be really cheap, especially as some more of these fifth-year option guys start piling up. The Debo contract is going to look cheap in comparison in a couple of years when he's going to be the age that Diggs is now.
I mean, they're both cheap contracts. The difference is Diggs is going to retire on this one, and Debo is going to get renegotiated again or extended.
Yeah,
that's the difference. But the quality of player is vastly different.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that he's renegotiation eligible. Like, if he does have an off year this year, that could be really attractive.
But that brings me to where I was coming from with this. So Diggs is obviously the upgrade because of the consistency in the offense he's in. But if Diggs has an off year, technically he had an off year last year as well.
What?
He had like 300 points, my dude.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about Debo. I'm sorry, I'm an
okay.
idiot. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Debo, if he has another bad down year, that could be just a new thing for him now. Like he could just be a wide receiver 3. And that's fine. But that brings me to the question of the renegotiation. Is it worth?
I think it might have been a wide receiver 3 on your roster. I don't think he's a wide receiver 3 on most teams.
No. I don't mean it like he is absolutely. I'm just saying it could lead to that, right? Like the where his dynasty value, quote unquote, falls. He could just be looked at as a wide receiver 3. He's 28 years old. He's produced poorly in two straight seasons. And, blah 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 blah. Is he worth a renegotiation at that point to add 6 years to a 28-year-old receiver, or just let him play it out with the 3 that he has left? Like that's where I was coming from with it. Of like, I'd rather just not have to make that decision, and just have the next Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
You think Diggs is the next Larry Fitzgerald?
Both of those players basically got swapped.
I mean, only difference is Fitzgerald never really forced his way out anywhere. He was pissed off at times, but he always kind of stuck with his team.
Ultimate company man.
Yeah,
I mean, like a consistent old man production situation.
Dedication to craft, and again, Diggs' skill set will age well. But again, just a matter of he's got to keep himself in the right situations. But all right, Chiefs and Steelers. Brian Robinson, Leonard Floyd for 211. Packers second next year, and Steelers third next year. So I think most were kind of expecting Robinson would go around a first in price, and I'd say this is probably close to a late first in value, with the cap dump of Leonard Floyd as well.
It just feels so cheap. Like just looking at it, it just feels like Brian Robinson was given to the Steelers for so cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I was offering a player in 130, and he said no. He'd rather have 2 seconds and a third. And I guess the cap dump might have been relevant in that situation, but
You should have tried 201.
I love. Well, he wanted the 201, but I would not budge on the 201. Well, that's not true, but he wouldn't add what I wanted to get added. Anyways, I love the addition here for Steelers. It could look really shitty in a week and a half if they draft a running back in rounds 1, 2, or 3. Not shitty, but it'll be an unfortunate drop in value for Robinson.
All right, we'll skip the next couple because those are just moving around fifth round comp picks. Then we have Chiefs going shopping with his comp picks that he's received here. Adrian Phillips, comp third, comp fourth, and comp fifth for Chandler Jones.
Yeah, I thought this was a nice pickup from Chiefs. Like it kind of seems like a cheap Chandler Jones, but maybe that's just him riding his name more than his production. I'm trying to pull up his stats right now. 115 points last year. Picked it up a lot in the second or like the last kind of month of the season. I know he was really bad before that, but
yep.
I think he acquired Chandler Jones this offseason.
Panthers?
Yeah, so he gave up Quinnen Williams, Chauncey Golston, 324, 429 for J.D. McKissick and Chandler Jones. So Quinnen, an earlier third and earlier fourth, and Golston for McKissick and Jones. So I'd say getting back Adrian Phillips and comps, I'd say this is maybe taking 85 or 90 cents on the dollar for him. Standing alone, it's probably fine, but in comparison to what he paid to get him earlier in the offseason, that would rather have what he originally started with.
I'm looking at his DEs too. It's not like he's like super deep there. So I'm kind of surprised.
Panthers loves this class of defensive ends.
That's true.
He's got a 205 and some thirds. I guess he's hoping someone falls to 205. Tell you what, they're gonna have to really fall past 201 for me to not take him.
This is true. All right, we'll wrap it up here. Buccaneers giving Trubisky, Flanagan, Foles, and a comp 4 for the 526. So captain to the
Yep.
Eagles. Eagles take on $4 million for an improvement of 20 picks. So from the 5th to the comp 4th. So well done.
And I
Art.
got Mitchell Trubisky.
Right.
That's an important piece.
It's a real ad.
Might be a franchise quarterback for somebody one day.
I mean, Mike is your guy's backup. You might as well get him for cheap.
This is true.
Yeah, really. I should.
He could be head for a 3rd round pick.
There you go.
What a deal!
A giant special.
What a deal! All right, for more deals like this one, tune in next week as we go through the needs of the NFC and talk about what deals we make in the meantime. But as we approach the draft, everyone keep those deals moving and keep looking at how to make your teams better. Because again, the draft's a lot of fun. Takes a couple of a week plus to go through, but it's one of the more fun times of the year. So everyone enjoy the process, and we'll talk to you next week.